Hi, I'm Alan Wenzel, Freepod host, welcoming you to this extended Freepod interview. Since its inception, the Greater Freeport Partnership has been working to promote and grow our region through different kinds of activities and initiatives. Near the top of that list of activities are the efforts to encourage business and economic growth. Joining me to talk about the economic health of our area is Executive Director Andrea Schultz-Winter and Nicole Haas, Brand Director for Greater Freeport Partnership. Welcome, Andrea and Nicole. Thanks for your time today.
Well, thanks for asking us to do the interview. We're happy to be here.
I'm going to just start with an overall general question. Andrea and Nicole, what is the current assessment of our area's economic health?
I'll take the lead, and then I'll ask Nicole to kind of jump in and give her thoughts as well. I think stable and growing. And it's very difficult. We're part of a global economy here in Northwest Illinois. We're not insulated from any of the current discussions around tariffs. So it is understanding that we know some of the biggest challenges our businesses have here are around workforce and making sure that they have enough qualified applicants to fill the roles. Oftentimes that is their barrier to growth. So we work diligently to bring resources to the table that might help with training resources, training programs, training dollars. And that's typically with other agencies or partners. And then also working in conjunction with our educational partners. We do education and promotion on what we do, but we're not teachers and we're not instructors. So working with Highland Community College, Career Tech, Freeport High School, as well as other Stephenson County area school districts to make sure employers are meeting with teachers, administrators, students, so they understand the career pathways that are available here. So we can hopefully create a pathway, maybe it's informally between a college or high school graduate, Highland graduate, and the workforce, or from high school to the workforce, or skill training programs.
It sounds like one of the roles of the Greater Freeport Partnership is to help prospective businesses and current businesses connect the dots, bring people together that need to be brought together to find the information that they might need, to find resources that might be helpful for them, whether they're expanding or initiating or growing a business. Would that be a correct way to view this?
Yeah, I think the partnership's role has always been convener. We talk a lot about here at the partnership that the nature of our organization being collaborative means that we sit in a lot of rooms, not just as the Economic Development Agency, but as the chamber or as the Main Street organization, and then also the calls that we sit on the state level, even sometimes the federal level, being informed by our elected officials and other government agencies, and then passing that information to our local businesses and partners. That is, I would say, 75% of the role the partnership plays is being able to take the resources that are available from the Workforce Connection, or as Andrea was saying, Highland Community College in the school district, and saying, okay, we see that you guys are doing this work, and here is who can help. And let's bring everybody to the table. I think that's the majority of what we do here at the partnership, is making sure that everybody is on the same page. And when, we talk about the figurative bringing people to the table, that is absolutely what the partnership does all the time. And expanding on what Andrea was talking about with economic health, we are not insulated here in Freeport to what goes on in a global economy.
Sure.
And so being a microcosm of that, understanding that what happens in a small town is unique to a small town, but anybody in the ag sector, anybody in the manufacturing sector feels that as well. So being able to understand the impact of what happens on a larger scale, and then how that affects us just here in Freeport and Stephenson County.
Whatever happens at a national level is going to ripple through communities like ours, because we're so connected to that larger ag world or manufacturing world that exists in the country.
Yeah. And now it's even on a more expedited pace because we are on a global scale, and with the internet and everything changing faster. We used to say that it took fashion trends, a couple of extra years to make it from, Milan or Paris or LA or New York before it was seen here on the streets of Northwest Illinois. But you don't have that anymore because you see the fads or trends, from a fashion perspective, but also on an economic perspective, you see it so much faster because business moves faster.
I want to return to something you mentioned earlier, Andrea, about the kinds of things that businesses look for in a community to help them expand, grow, or to come into a community. You mentioned a qualified workforce. Qualified applicants are really critical for a manufacturer or any business that's trying to do work here in the Stevenson County. What other items would you put on that list? What are businesses seeking, have to have, got to make sure it's here before we get serious about looking at business expansion, business growth?
I think some of the things that the infrastructure in terms of, and I want to use that term broadly, thinking about it as more of a hard and soft infrastructure. Hard infrastructure in terms of a business that's existing here and wanting to grow might be looking for, are there available existing buildings that we could purchase, move into, retrofit, renovate for our needs? If there isn't, is there available land that could be built upon that would have utilities already to the site? Then driving down the cost of that and the timeline to get a new building built. So having those types of infrastructure, hard infrastructure things in place is always great. Also, when I think about soft infrastructure, I'm thinking about it from the people perspective. And we talked about workforce before, but to know you have to have a workforce, you need to have those other networks in terms of childcare and housing. It is hard to recruit people to the area if they cannot find a place that they want to live, that's in their price point, that's meeting their desired needs. And we know that we have had fewer housing starts, fewer houses being built in the last decades here in Northwest Illinois. I would also say that you're going to hear this a lot. We're not unique. This is not a Northwest Illinois unique problem. This is throughout the state of Illinois. This is throughout the nation trying to solve this problem. The other thing I mentioned about childcare, people need a great, safe place for their child to go so that they can go to work. And if that's not available, then that parent guardian isn't going to be able to enter the workforce. So we already know, again, also not unique to Northwest Illinois, that we don't have enough slots, and that is often a complaint that employers share with us, that their employees are reporting to them, or they're on a wait list. Especially it's very challenging to find a place for a newborn or for a 3-month-old to go. And then, so the partnership, as we were talking about before, as a convener, as a partner, we're working on solving some of those both hard and soft infrastructure problems. Again, there's no overnight fix. I talk about these things in relation. This is not a sprint. This is a marathon, and this is going to take some time to get figured out. But we need a Freeport, Stevenson County sized solution to this. And I think we're going to have to work in collaboration. So I have seen many initiatives, projects, meetings, stakeholder engagement where these problems are getting talked about. And it's going to take a little while to get towards a solution. And then it's going to take a commitment from leaders. I would use that term broadly, be it elected, private, public, to commit to the solution. And it's going to take everybody coming around the table. And then the last thing I'm going to say in terms of type of maybe a soft infrastructure is attitude. How do we talk about the place where we live in terms of how are we, the ease of doing business here? Again, the partnership's role in terms of helping navigate a business, be it existing or a new one, is to help navigate those waters, connect them, be it with regulatory agencies, city, permitting, incentives. We're here to help a business navigate that process help them demystify who they need to talk to and what does that agency look like here? What is that called? And who is the person within that organization they need to talk to? That's our role. And the faster we can get to certainty for that business, the quicker they are going to make an investment here. I always say a confused mind will say no. So it is really, anytime a business is looking to make an investment, there's risk involved. Whatever we can do, however many knowns we can make known for them, we will help drive down that risk, and we will help get to a solution faster and hopefully help save them money and time and headache. But a part of that comes with an attitude of, we're going to work together. We're here to work in service with you because we want to see you succeed.
You mentioned that a lot of the issues that we deal with as a community are not unique to us, whether it's infrastructure or qualified workforce or childcare or housing. All of those are important in every community. And I imagine a lot of them are suffering or experiencing the same kinds of pluses and minuses with both of those. Are there any things about Stevenson County, our region, Freeport, that are unique in a way that would attract a business before they would go to another community? Anything that gives us a competitive advantage here, knowing that, a lot of communities are struggling with the same kinds of issues, but is there something here that would actually cause people to take another look at us because we're unique in some way?
I think one of the things we hear from employers is that there is a higher rate of productivity. There is a work ethic. I don't know whether that comes from an agricultural background, but there is a strong work ethic here. And that is seen and felt by employers, especially those who have production or they have facilities in other locations. I think that sets us apart. I think, we're the state of Illinois and we're close to 2 other states, being a borderline county. So that has certain drawbacks. Sometimes we have a different taxing infrastructure. Things are taxed differently. Sometimes that can work against us. But what I would say is that our proximity to other major metro markets is helpful to a business. You can be, whether that's for people or product, you can be in, 6 major metro markets within 2 hours.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
But I would also probably say that the cost of doing business here is less than if you were stationed, you were housed in those major metro markets. Mm-hmm. So that's helpful. And I think when we think about manufacturing, we need to always think about ourselves in relationship to the larger region and what our competitive advantage is. I would also say one thing about being in Illinois compared to other regions, we have a lot of water.
Mm-hmm. Right.
We have a lot of water and it's not expensive. We also have a fair amount of electricity and power, those types of utilities, especially when we get into manufacturing, energy, data centers, talking about those things. Those are all, there is a big use of those types of utilities. So those are some things that I think are competitive about Northwest Illinois. Anything you would add, Nicole?
I think Andrea had brought up attitude. One of the other things is motivation. I don't think that the average person understands that when you see growth and development, yes, it's the Greater Freeport Partnership at work, and it's the city of Freeport or Stevenson County or the other public players involved, but there is always a property owner or a developer, and finding the motivation. That is really why you see development happen where it happens. I see a lot of comments and hear discussions about, well, why isn't this here? Or why isn't something happening to this building or whatever? And there are usually so many factors that are behind the scenes that are not in the control of, for sure the partnership or even the public bodies to bring something up to a standard. I mean, when some of these buildings were put together, they didn't have they couldn't handle the electric load that is needed now for some of the data and, everything that is put into a building, and the motivation of whoever is looking to change that property over. So when you see people like the Meadows Mall that are really working hard to put great things into that property, that's why you see economic development spurred. So as we try to find other people who are really working hard to make their property something special for Freeport or Stevenson County, that's when our job becomes so much more exciting, because we can't make things happen without a piece of land or a site or something else and the motivation behind that. So yeah, we would love to see things happen in certain geographic areas, but unless we have a landowner or a property owner who is as excited about that, you can't make people make decisions about their properties.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
No, all you can do is, I think, build relationships and tell the story of how that could be beneficial, right? Yeah.
You mentioned the Meadows, and that's a great example of a lot of investment going into an area that's really spurred some growth in that area. Lincoln Mall has been repopulated and is now nicely. How are things coming with the downtown emphasis and activities that I know you've spent a lot of time with and have been very successful in bringing the downtown back to a vibrant place? How are things going in the downtown areas?
I think we're seeing an ebb and flow in a cycle. And we have had recently some businesses that have decided to, and I think it was for a variety of different factors per each business, maybe move to a different area of the community, maybe move out of the community, and maybe close their doors because of retirement. So I think that with that, there is opportunities for new businesses to grow. So we're always working to help those property owners. How can we help market your property? How can we help, again, type of matchmaking to a new tenant? We continuously do a base camp entrepreneur small business startup program so that they can get the education and the resources that they need to make good business decisions when they're starting a new business. We hopefully can get many of those participants to the point where they are ready for a brick and mortar space. And we just wrapped up our last session on Tuesday evening, and I gave a discussion and about come to us before you sign a lease. And when you think you're ready to make that step to get in a brick and mortar space, we're happy to help you find something that would meet your business needs. So many times that is a location in downtown, not always. And I think one of the other things that we are working on is continuously meeting with property owners to really understand what goals they have for their building, where they're at in the life cycle of their building too, thinking about as people age and get towards retirement, they might not be interested in owning the building anymore. Can we connect you to somebody who is interested? Or they might not be interested in, biting off a new renovation project. How can we connect you with someone who might be or willing to partner? That takes connection and making those relationships, establishing some trust. And then the other thing we're always looking at, we're trying to quantify and understand how many people are living downtown, how many upper floor residential units are in downtown, and how can we have more of those created? More people living downtown will have more people shopping, dining. You're also going to change the business model for each building because instead of just having the ground floor space be rented out, you're going to have an income stream from maybe the second and third and fourth story, depending upon the building. Again, that's going to take some investment, but those are all goals that we're pushing towards. And I think, that's probably what the downtown looked like 50, 75 years ago. There were more people living in upper floors, but we know a lot of upper floors were also office space.
Right.
Could it be retrofitted to a residential unit? And the answer is yes. It's just going to take time, energy, and money.
Sure.
with a lot of things we've talked about today, it's education and promotion, telling the story of there actually are a lot of people who rent downtown upper story apartments.
That's interesting.
And
I guess I would have guessed that.
Yeah. And they run the gamut for what you're looking for. Some are have on the
Very
lower
affordable,
side.
low cost.
Exactly. And other ones are really high end and they're beautiful. So, and they have a very low vacancy rate. People are always living in those apartments. And then also working at it from the other perspective of if somebody's going to live downtown, what amenities are they looking for?
Right.
So working with businesses who fit that bill so that people want to be downtown. But it really is one of those things. It's a yes and. We need to work on putting the amenities in downtown for people to live there while also working on the properties so people will be in those spaces. And that's something that you're going to see the partnership continue to tell the story of throughout 2025, working with investors and telling their stories because there are people doing great work downtown.
And if you can meet the needs of the property owner, the building owner, the renter, and the needs of the person who is looking for a space to come downtown and match those two needs, and you get a win-win for everybody.
Yeah. And you always have to look at things from a holistic picture. You can't just address a problem from one side.
Right.
Because, in this case, you could have people living downtown that aren't then happy because they don't have their needs met, or vice versa. You could have businesses downtown that don't have the business because we don't have people in the upper stories. So working both sides of that while also, we are a Main Street community here in Freeport. And when they did their onboarding process, they do something called transformation strategies. And we had a survey sent out, I think it was probably 2 years ago now, asking the greater community. And we had great participation in that survey saying, what do you want downtown? What do you frequent most downtown? And
that'd be a tremendous
surprising
guide in helping
absolutely
you figure out what's needed.
And not surprising that the things that people use most downtown, you have the regular amenities of the library, the post office, the things they come down for, but then also the Lindo Theater, the Wagner House, the coffee shops, and then the boutiques, people come downtown for those things.
Right.
But then it was really interesting to see what people thought they wanted downtown. And some of those things are already offered. And then you wonder too, okay, if we had a bookstore, or we had men's clothing store, or we added another coffee shop, one thing they put in there was a bakery. And now we have one of those downtown.
The dough place.
Yeah. And then Full Circle Cafe in the library is now offering classes. So you could do that stuff yourself. So a lot of those are being met.
Right.
But also, then as a community, we have to support those things that we said we wanted. Right. So there's always an education piece to that as well.
When I'm nearing the end of the interview here, but I've got a couple of questions for you. One of the things that always strikes me about the larger Freeport, Stevenson County area, there's some really neat things going on in this county. Businesses, I call them hidden gems. Businesses are doing some really cool things that we really don't know about because we're not in that world, or we're not tapped into the right source of information for what's really happening. Can you identify it? And I hate to put you on the spot. Are there some real hidden gems in the Stevenson County in terms of things that are happening a lot of people just don't know about, but it's really cool?
I think I kind of have a short list in my head, and I know Nicole does as well. So I'll start off and say that maybe this isn't a hidden gem for certain generations of this community. But especially having a couple of high schoolers and, another, getting their perspective and understanding what career opportunities are here is really interesting because they just don't know what many of these businesses do. For example, Honeywell. We have Honeywell, and they have many different assets throughout the community, different plants, different locations. And, they've been here 50 years this year, right? And it was MicroSwitch beforehand. But what do they do? And it's so interesting to hear that they assume high schoolers, or, my kids assumed that they make the thermometers. The thermostats, because that's what they see, right? They see the Honeywell name on a thermostat, or they make a air filter. That's not what they make here.
Mm-hmm.
What they make here are, from MicroSwitch, right? A patented technology that was developed right here in Freeport, Illinois. They make tiny switches that go and feed the aerospace industry that are in airplanes, in space shuttles, in the International Space Station, that are made right here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is, unless you've had a family member who has worked there.
You wouldn't know that.
You don't know that.
Right.
Right. So I think it is always, never make an assumption that they know that and make it real to them. Something that they can relate to, I think is really important.
So not only do we have hidden gems, it's making younger folks in particular aware of what those gems are so that they may want to come back for a career or to.
Well, and I think it's also the attitude of like, I live in Freeport, Illinois. Like, you live in Freeport, Illinois. And that things that are made here go throughout the world and into space.
Yeah.
Like technology that was created here
Right.
has impacted the face of...
Should give your community pride.
Absolutely. And sometimes I just don't think people know those stories.
Yeah.
And they should be supportive and prideful of that. And I think one of the other things that I would spotlight as a small business, entrepreneurs who have a couple of small businesses, they have Wall of Yarn, and then they have Exchange Street Printery. But one of the things that Wall of Yarn is a great yarn shop here in downtown. And if you're part of the knitting community, you know that knitters are going to travel for yarn. And not every yarn is the same. So they will travel for specific types of yarn to make specific projects. I would akin it to a weird analogy to like the classic car industry. Like when you're in that field or that's your passion, hobby, you understand that it's really multi-layered and there's a lot more variation in that. But one of the things that is part of their business that maybe might not be well known is that they are the only distributor of a certain type of Norwegian yarn.
Oh, really?
For North America.
Oh, really?
Right.
Wow.
So they,
Norwegian yarn.
Norwegian yarn. Yeah. Right. And so I think that they also are fluent in Norwegian. And so they do some translation of the instructions. But then they redistribute that yarn throughout yarn shops in the United States and in Canada.
That's pretty cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
And I know they go to yarn shows across the globe for that. So a hidden gem.
Yeah. Nicole, what would you put on the list of a hidden gem?
So I think the other thing, we talk a lot about economic industry and economic health based on employers and things like that. But also tourism has a large economic impact to Freeport and Stevenson County. And I think we are the worst tourists in our own unique areas. And that's anybody. That's not just Freeport. But, you travel other places and you look at whatever they have for their tourist attraction. You very rarely do it in your own hometown. So I have the privilege to be able to go to a lot of other communities and talk about what we offer in our area and to see other people light up about what we have here. I talk about Union Dairy, and then when you get your ice cream, you walk across to Lincoln Douglas Debate Square and you can walk through all the exhibits and find out about the Freeport Doctrine. And if you're a history buff, you really know what that is. And now the Arts Plaza and soon to be the Art Museum. But I think the other part of that is also getting the volunteers and the people who have put their sweat equity into these attractions for so long to understand that people really care about what you are doing and they find so much value in that. Everything from the Stevenson County Antique Engine Club and Museum to the historical societies that are throughout the county. Oh my gosh, there are so many, and they're working together to cross promote, as well as Demester's Apple Land. They aren't just donuts, they do fantastic stuff in the fall. And Black Hawk Monument, so many things that we do. And we have a great base of volunteers that care for these things and are always looking for more help to, to service those really important spaces, let alone all of our outdoor things that are taken care of by the Freeport Park District, the trails and the parks and all of those.
When you throw in Jane Addams Trail and all of the folks that visit that monthly. yearly.
Exactly. And we're getting into that season where the outdoors, Oakdale Nature Preserve, when, if you're talking about birding or biking or off-road biking, so many things that if that's not your thing, you forget what an amazing gem we have right here. But you need to understand from like a residential perspective that people are coming to our community because this is their thing.
Can I give you a real small anecdotal example? Every once in a while I stop at the Artesian Well up in Winslow, and I grew up near Winslow, so I've known about it for years. But you go there and it's nice, cool water. You get a nice cold drink of water. And if you're there for half an hour, I was surprised by the number of people that drive into the Artesian Well, fill up water jugs, and they're from all over. They're driving in from Wisconsin, from counties to the west, counties to the east of us. And it's like, wow, it's like a little tourist mecca. And just in a day's time, the number of people that would stop and take advantage of that artesian water, just amazing. Just one small example of how there are lots of attractions here that people need to appreciate who live here.
Yeah. And even another quick story was that this is at Eatery since it moved into the basement of the Hampton Inn. I've had people, the staff over there tell me that like people will ride their bikes from Madison down here, spend a night at the Hampton, and they eat it. This is it, and talk about it, and then the next day they'll ride their bike back up to Madison. Wow. So it's really phenomenal to see that other people find so much value in the things that we have right here, and we as a residential community need to put that much emphasis and pride in what we have.
You've been very generous with the time you've spent here with our Freepod listeners. I'd like to ask the two of you, do you have any final comments, final thoughts that you'd like to offer us before we sign off on the interview?
Sure. I think the one thing that I would think of is there are a lot of great opportunities in this community, and there are a lot of things that do need work. Don't think that someone else is going to do it. We're all leaders in our own right. And I think that there is nothing, I guess, to me, no greater honor than working with others to make the place that you've chosen to call home better for yourself and for your family and for those to come after you. And I think when you come at it from a place of community, nothing but good things can happen. And continue to just, do the good work, be inspired by others, inspire others, don't afraid to get dirty, and see how you can contribute in a positive, constructive way. That would be the one last thing I would say.
The other thing I think, and Alan, I recently re-listened to your interview with Misinformation and Disinformation with Jim from a couple of weeks ago or months ago. And if you have a question about something you see going on in the area, we value Freepod as a resource, and we value other sources that provide objective information. Please call our office. If you have questions about something that you see, I promise we are friendly people that really appreciate people coming to the source to ask the questions rather than taking whatever rumor you saw on social media and continuing to perpetuate something that potentially is misinformation. So we want to put everybody's best foot forward for Freeport and Stevenson County. And in doing that, we need to have that same mentality through everybody who lives here, wants to live here, and works here. And that's not something that just a couple of staff members at the partnership can continue to push forward. It really takes the entire community. And we appreciate anybody who has a question, call our office, and we are happy to put that out there. Billy answers our phones, and he is a wealth of information. If not, he will get you to the right person, 815-233-1350. There's a lot of information on our website, greaterfreeport.com. You guys at Freepod do a great job of talking about our event guide that comes out every Thursday, of all the things there is to do in the area. But if you have questions about things that are happening with a specific building, or you hear of a specific thing that's happening, give us a call. we are happy to tell you what we can in a timely manner.
Andrea, Nicole, thank you so much for not only the work you do, but for taking time with us today to talk a little bit more about your work with the Greater Freeport Partnership. Listeners, if you'd like more information, visit the website, greaterfreeport.com. If you have a question, call the office. Folks are willing to help you get the information that you need and to answer your questions. This is Alan Wenzel reminding you that our regular news podcasts are every Thursday at noon, and our interviews drop every Tuesday beginning at noon. We're also available for your listening pleasure on our website and at the WNIJ Public Radio in DeKalb website. As always, our thanks to the Mass Communications Department at Highland Community College for producing these broadcasts, and thank you to all of our volunteers who help bring you the news that you've been missing.